Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to wait around a little bit longer and let folks trickle in. We can't wait to hear from Aaron Jacobs and Scott Fitzgerald about the wonderful ways that they're engaging youth through youth cycling through their retail shops. Aaron and Scott will get started in about 2 minutes. Everyone, once again, thank you for joining. As I said, we can't wait to speak with Aaron Jacobs and Scott Fitzgerald about the importance of building community through youth retail engagement. We'll introduce ourselves as we get started, but my name is Nick Aguilera, Youth and Community Partnerships Manager at People for Bikes. Aaron is owner of Bicycle Trip in Santa Cruz, and Scott Fitzgerald is CEO of Buddy Pegs. Both of their shops are doing wonderful jobs engaging youth in their communities, and we'll talk about why that's important when we get started. Once again, we will wait just a little bit longer to let a few more folks join our call. We can't wait to share examples from Scott's and Aaron's shops, as well as some other hopeful trends and challenges that we're facing as we keep working to get more kids on bikes around the country. And we will wait one more minute before we get started. I think it looks like we'll get going. Everyone, welcome to Pedaling Forward Together, Building Community Through Youth and Retailer Engagement. Today, we're excited to speak with Aaron Jacobs from Bicycle Trip in Santa Cruz, California, and Scott Fitzgerald from Buddy Pegs in Northwest Arkansas about the wonderful ways that their retail shops are engaging with youth cycling in the community. We'll talk about why that's important. My name is Nick Aguilera, Youth and Community Partnerships Manager at People for Bikes. I manage a lot of our relationships with large national youth cycling programs around the country and making sure that we're engaging them in our policy and infrastructure work as these wonderful programs around the country are doing the work to get them participating. Scott and Aaron, I'm going to give you all the chance to obviously tell you a little bit more about yourselves when we jump into the panel time, but would you briefly like to introduce yourselves? And Scott, we'll go to you first. Just name and who you are and where you're located.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Nick. My name is Scott Fitzgerald, and I'm located right here in Bentonville, Arkansas. I'm currently sitting in our Buddy Pegs Ride Center here next to our retail shop.
Thanks, Scott. And Aaron, where are you calling in from?
Yeah, my name is Aaron Jacobs, and I am from Bicycle Trip in Santa Cruz, California.
And Aaron and Scott, thank you so much once again for joining us and sharing examples about the wonderful ways that you all are engaging youth in your communities, as well as some of the strategies and challenges that you're facing in that work. To run through our quick agenda, I'm going to jump into some of the youth trends from People for Bikes 2022 U.S. Bicycling Participation Report, briefly talk about how People for Bikes is supporting youth bicycling, and then talk about the importance, the criticality of retailer engagement. Folks like Aaron and Scott's work on the ground to get more kids on bikes. We'll jump to a panel with both of them to talk through a little bit about their stories, and then we will jump to live Q&A. So please take down any questions that come to mind through our conversation. We're looking forward to seeing those and getting to them at the end of this presentation. So People for Bikes since 2016 has been conducting a U.S. bicycling participation study about the ridership of people living in the country. More Americans are riding bicycles than ever. 34% of Americans, that's 108 million, rode a bicycle outside sometime in the last year for recreation or for transportation. That's huge, and we want to keep seeing this number grow. Youth were more likely than adults to ride a bicycle to travel for social, recreation, or leisure activities, as well as to ride a bicycle to school or work. Part of that's because kids, aren't at driving age, although we're hoping to help shift that culture and make it so kids don't need a car to be free in their communities. More than half of the youth in America, that's 53% of kids aged 3 to 9, and almost half, 47% of kids aged 10 to 17 rode a bicycle sometime in 2022. That said, ridership for youth aged 3 to 17 continues a very small downward trend compared to ridership in 2016. And what are some of the reasons for that? There's a lot here at play. This is a long list, and we could go into much more depth about each of these points, but infrastructure and safe places to ride, affordability and access to bicycles, education and engagement in schools and bike shops, the distance of places that kids need to go, other commitments, other sports, other interests, other activities, outgrowing bicycles, and sometimes keeping those maintained and up to date. Out of interest and response to these very small downward trends, People for Bikes conducted a general population survey in March 2023, asking parents some of the reasons why their kids aren't riding, as well as some of the reasons that would motivate their kids to learn if they don't already know. As you can see, one of the biggest responses from parents in this survey for at least why their kids are not on a bicycle was the need for safer places to ride. And they also spoke to, bicycle riding classes offered as part of schools programming, as well as bicycle riding classes and bike classes offered through local bike shops as something that they can really see as motivation for getting their kids on bikes. This speaks, to that need for better bicycle infrastructure, kind of underpinning all of our work. But also, just as you can see in those survey responses, the importance of education and engagement in schools and local bike shops and in our communities. Really quick, I wanted to mention and reference People for Bikes' new Great Bicycle Infrastructure Project. If you haven't already heard about it, we'll make sure to send the link to you all in follow-up to this webinar. But it's People for Bikes' work to make the US the best bicycling nation in the world, and 3 strategies to do so. 1, we are keeping a national database, a map, and a list tracking bike projects all around the country that we want to get built in the next 5 years and that can be built in the next 5 years. There's unprecedented amounts of federal funding for bike and active transportation infrastructure in the country, and People for Bikes is working to make sure that we take advantage of it to make it safe for kids and people of all ages and abilities to ride. We have pulled together a list of legislative strategies for communities around the country to take and adopt to make policy that's better for biking around the country. And we are working on local investment to activate advocates and support advocates around the country as they want these bike networks and these bike projects built. Also, we have been hosting a working group of National Youth Bicycle Program leaders from around the country who are working very much like Aaron and Scott to get more kids riding bikes and make them stay on bikes, developing them into lifelong riders. We want to, and this is challenging for everybody, but make sure to continue measuring and tracking the positive impact of getting youth on bikes around the country, and make sure that these organizations, chapters are connecting, 1, with each other, and then 2, with local nonprofits all around the country. This map is incomplete because it's missing so many incredible grassroots youth cycling programs all around the country. But at the moment, People for Bikes has a list, a map with the nationwide locations of 8 of these YCC programs all around the United States. I'll make sure to send a link to this in the follow-up to this webinar. As you could see in that survey from parents, retailers are a key way to get engaged. And sometimes retailers are one of the first. It's such an exciting thing to walk into a bike shop and to see bikes. And local bike shops are understanding and seeing the importance of engaging youth. We all know that supporting youth cycling is an investment in the future of bicycling. We all know that supporting youth cycling, as it engages families and kids, is good for business. And we all know that supporting youth cycling diversifies the bicycle industry. As we've been talking to retailers around the country to hear their stories about the way that their work fits into these points and fits into these motivations has been really motivating and exciting. And there's so many stories to tell. These great examples from around the country keep showing up. We want to keep making this happen all around the United States. Speaking of, just before this panel, I spoke to Chris and Allison Palmer, who are co-owners of Mystic Cycle Center up in Connecticut. Their NVDA's 2021 Platinum and People's Choice Bicycle Retailer of Excellence Certificate Awards. And they're doing so much to get kids on bikes in their community. I could hear them speak to these 3 points when I talked to them on the webinar or in advance of this webinar. They're not able to make it. They're celebrating their anniversary in Yellowstone. So happy anniversary, Chris and Allison. But they are supporting a local Ledyard Middle School Riding for Focus program, hosting bike nights for that program, bike build nights for that program, as well as their Ledyard Middle School mountain bike team, and the Northeast Youth Cycling mountain bike team in their area as well. They're seeing this get kids on bikes who have never been on bicycles before. They're seeing this bring new people into their shop. And they're really excited about the impact that they're seeing this make in their community. And speaking of excellent retailers, we're really excited to have this wonderful panel, Scott Fitzgerald, CEO of Buddy Pegs, and Aaron Jacobs, owner of the Bicycle Trip, to speak to their motivation for involving youth cycling programs in their community and getting involved, a little bit about their history, and some of the positive impacts that Scott and Aaron, you both are seeing in your communities on business and in community at large through this work. After that, I have a few questions. You two might have some questions, and we're excited to hear questions from the audience about the success, strategies, challenges, other questions that arise as we hear your stories. Thank you both so much again for joining us this morning to talk about this. We all know this is a critical topic for the bike industry moving forward. So this is going to be on the back of behind you all this whole time. And to get started, Aaron, introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Aaron Jacobs, and I am a co-owner of Bicycle Trip in Santa Cruz, and also a Project Bike Tech board member. The Bicycle Trip has been in business for over 50 years, and I have been with the shop for 25 of them. I was really fortunate as a youth to be placed in a high school program in a bike shop when I was 16 years old. And that started my career in the bicycle industry. Now, with 30 years of experience, I have the opportunity to support youth programs through our bike shop, like Project Bike Tech. I've also been on the board of Project Bike Tech for 15 years since the program started. My business partner, Barry Michelle, had this amazing idea to filter new industry talent into the bicycle industry through high school bicycle education, like Auto Shop in the past, but for bicycles. Now a national program serving thousands of youth across the country. And so it's just been an amazing opportunity to have a bike shop to be a vehicle to support things like this that I'm so passionate about from my background and history. And really just going into, how we as a bicycle shop engage with the youth and community. So our bicycle shop, Bicycle Trip, and other local bike shops in our community work with local and national program, Project Bike Tech. Project Bike Tech is an accredited high school elective course that uses bicycle mechanics as a conduit to teach core and STEM elements to students: science, technology, engineering, math. Bike Tech in School is a college and career-ready class that teaches students the necessary skills to work as a professional bicycle mechanic and provide a stepping stone to a multitude of cycling industry careers. We partner with this program and provide internship and job opportunities. We also support and sponsor a high school composite mountain bike team that races the NorCal Mountain Bike League, as well as another youth nonprofit that does bicycle rodeos and education at the elementary school level called Bike Smart. And so we've had this great opportunity to really work with our community and find the opportunities that allow us to really engage with youth. And, really that comes back to, we still are a business, so we want positives of how it's going to affect our business. And so we start looking into things of ways that works. So, what we really, the positive impacts we really see on our business is that, we get the opportunity to foster the next generation of bicycle professionals. We gain new enthusiastic employees. Um, our sales increase due to having new entry level service staff to assemble bikes to keep our sales floor stocked. This also provides the opportunity to have our most senior mechanics dedicated to the more challenging services. Offering all this support for youth programs in our community gives us a positive reputation in our community. And it just feels great to be supporting youth, and our next generation. I personally have 15-year-old twin sons, and they both are now working at the bike shop and ride all the time. And so it's just neat to see the enthusiasm, coming from, kids that often like to do other things, not even outside. And so really, as we go a little further into this, there's positive impacts on the community itself. And so one of the big ones is having more people on renewable transportation. um, Getting more people on these bikes, less people in cars. In our community specifically, we have an amazing program that is surrounded around National Bike Week and Bike Month, and so we gain a lot of ridership during these times that get people engaged, raising awareness about the positives of cycling. And one of the big benefits, giving a youth a positive environment to be in. And then really my favorite part really is just how to get, this is one of the biggest ways as I find to get more people on bikes. And so that's always, one of my big kind of mottos is how can I get more people on bikes regardless of how they're getting there. And so those are really the ways that we've been able to engage. And a big part of that has been our relationship with Project Bike Tech. And I would encourage anybody that's looking for opportunities in their community to reach out to Project Bike Tech. There's a great website, projectbiketech.org. There's also, you'd be able to reach out to director at projectbiketech.org as well. Those would be some great ways to consider how you could grow, youth cycling in your community. But that one works extremely well for us, along with these other programs that we're involved in.
Aaron, thank you so much for the work that you all are doing to get more kids on bikes in your community and for your story. Everyone listening, if any questions came to mind, feel free to drop those in the Q&A as we're getting through when we welcome Scott on the panel, and we'll get to those during the live Q&A after Scott's presentation. Scott, welcome.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, that's awesome work, Aaron. Really stoked to hear about it. My cycling story started, like many of you, riding bikes as a kid. Bikes really defined my childhood. It was neighborhood riding. It was building sketchy trails through the woods behind my house. And it really was the primary focus of my childhood. All my friends, what we did, we rode around the neighborhoods. It really sort of launched me on a career later in life to focus on cycling, both professionally and in the advocacy world. But there was a little bit of a pause in the middle there where my high school years and college years, didn't have a lot of cycling in them. But I did find mountain biking and then just general cycling again late in college, which led me into becoming a bike mechanic. As I exited college and was looking for that professional track and professional job, I got really inspired by working in bike shops, building friendships, building relationships, and just building community through bikes. And I decided to stick with it. So in 2002, I opened up a bike shop with my wife in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, called Fitzgerald's Bicycles. And we ran that for quite some time up until about 2015 when we sold that shop so we could focus on more of a comprehensive strategy to try to increase youth cycling participation in the US. We became really passionate through different people for bikes events, through interbike seminars, through Frostbike seminars, all focused on why do we see a decline in youth cycling. And we said, well, this is really where we're passionate and this is where we would like to apply our attention. So we sold our bike shop and we launched Buddy Pegs, all with the idea to bring more kids along for the ride. Buddy Pegs is a throwback reference, like the pegs that you put on the back of your bike and you can put your buddy on and take them along for a ride. And so we adopted that name, with the idea that we wanted to bring more people along for the ride. We started Buddy Pegs with 2 children's picture books about biking. The first being B is for Bicycles, and that's distributed nationally through the bike industry. So a lot of shops carry that book. It's been really great to see it on road trips and be reached out to by friends who are road tripping and they see our book in different shops. We wrote a subsequent book, and then we also did 2 seasons of children's storytelling podcasts about bikes called The World of Buddy Pegs. And the original intention with Buddy Pegs was to be a media company that really helped inspire the future generation around cycling and meet kids where they're at. And oftentimes media is the first opportunity for kids to really start to get connected to characters and concepts. And we want to connect them to bikes. But through that effort, we pivoted as we started to talk to more families. As we did different events and traveled around the country with our book, we heard that there was this huge need and desire for more childhood bicycle classes and education. So we started to develop our own bike classes, first at the preschool ages, starting at that 2-year-old balance bike level, and in modeling out some curriculum and lesson plans around that. Fast forward, we ended up developing some curriculum and programs for preschool and elementary age kids because we felt that was the most urgent need in youth cycling advocacy, that parents just were a little bit lost in how to teach their kids how to ride. There was still a strong desire to have kids on bikes from parents, but they really didn't know where to go. So we ended up moving the company to Bentonville, Arkansas, because we were looking for a place where we could do this programming year round, where we had a bigger population base than where we were living. And there was just a general tailwind around biking. We wanted to be in a community that was really on the front edge of cycling advocacy, bicycle community development, and Bentonville, Arkansas is leading the way in that, in my opinion. In a lot of people's opinion, it's just amazing what's going on here. So now Buddy Pegs is really primarily a youth cycling education center. I'm sitting in the ride room where we do learn to pedal classes and balance bike classes. But our programming includes after school programs all around the community, weekend bike schools, lots of summer camps that we run both at our facility as well as through Parks and Rec departments all around Northwest Arkansas and now up in Kansas City too. We just expanded up to Kansas City this year. We also offer extracurricular bike classes that we run directly at preschools. So that's a really fast growing program where we deploy our coaches to a preschool and the teachers bring kids out, 6 to 8 kids at a time, and we set up a bicycle playground in the parking lot of the preschool. And then we run learn to pedal classes and just balance bike play dates and balance bike classes directly at those preschools. Here at our headquarters in Bentonville, we also operate a full service family bike shop with all the best kids bikes, kids accessories, and family e-cargo bikes. So we're kids and cargo. That's our bike shop theme. And we did, being a retailer, previously, I sort of didn't want to get back into retail, but it was pretty obvious pretty quickly when we started doing our programming, sort of scaling it out a little bit more, that there was such a need for parents to have good access to equipment. And most shops don't really support the youth cycling category, the youth category all that well. And parents are really struggling to find the right equipment. It makes it a lot harder to teach a kid how to ride a bike if they're not on, a good modern bike. So we did open up our shop. It's been great. We carry all the best brands for youth equipment. And then we started to extend into cargo bikes because that was a natural extension of trying to get more families on bikes and bring cycling from just, a youth activity to a whole family activity. And really our whole goal with everything that we do with Buddy Pegs is to really help turn around this decline in the number of kids riding bikes in the US. And we're trying to do that by developing a national model for early childhood cycling education and family cycling education. And the more we think about it, what we really want to do is we want to normalize, we want to help. We can't do this alone. We just want to help all the good work that's going on out there, to normalize bikes, right? Like reposition biking into the youth sports industry and shift bikes in the eyes of parents from this nostalgic individual pastime to more of a relevant modern sport. And of course, as more importantly, a shared family activity. So we really look a lot at the youth sports industry, and we're trying to bring biking into that industry because it's a really healthy industry. It's a $19 billion industry. It's bigger than the NFL, and parents are really leaning in quite a bit on youth sports and programming and coaching and camps and just dedicated programming for their kids. So we're really trying to position biking alongside all the other traditional ball sports and other activities, even gymnastics and martial arts, etc. So we have two sides of our business. We have this programming side of our business, and we have the retail side of the business. And the positive impacts from that are meaningful because one feeds the other, but it's not always one starting, feeding the other. Because sometimes parents come in through programming, they want to take a learn to pedal class, and they want their child to, take that next step, or they take one of our mountain bike trail schools. And then all of a sudden they're looking for equipment, and we have a bike shop. So it really helps the bike shop because we're cultivating that customer through our programming. Other times parents come in off the street because they're looking to buy a bike, and we have the best selection in town. They don't know anything about our programming, but as we talk to them and we realize where their child is at in their cycling journey, we can then offer the right programming, and parents love it. So each side of the business feeds the other. But the biggest positive impact, or the one that we celebrate the most, is when parents come to us because of youth programming, and then they realize they want to get into the sport. And it happens frequently where parents are not they're not cyclists, they're not really in the sport themselves, but then they get pulled into it because their kids are starting to lean in on it. And then all of a sudden mom or dad are leaning over to us after a class and saying, I guess I need to get a bike. Like, what do I do? I can't run down the greenway after my kid anymore. They're riding too well. And then all of a sudden we're really bringing that whole family into the sport, which is great for our business and obviously great for the whole industry and the community. And that's the really big benefit to the community too, is just through the programming that we do, we see so many new families coming into the sport. And it's something that I feel really passionate about in the bike industry, about talking about this issue more, which is parents almost universally still want their kid to learn how to ride a bike. It's still a meaningful part of childhood in the eyes of parents. They often stumble in how to do it, but they want that to happen for their kid. And if we can capture that momentum, we can harness that energy. We can also bring mom and dad along and bring them into the sport too, because it's pretty likely that they have ridden in the past, but they're not riding currently. So we've got this huge opportunity of non-endemics that could come into the sport through their kids. So that's the really big positive impact on our community. We live in Arkansas. It is on the top 5 unhealthiest states list. So we'd really like to get off that list. And I think cycling can have a huge impact on that, as we all know. So there's tons of benefits to what we're doing collectively. And it just warms our hearts when we see new people coming to the sport and really getting into it. And children are a great gateway for that. So I think I'll pause there, Nick.
Scott, thank you so much, Aaron, both of you, to hear about the way that you're creating this lifeline pathway for kids to get on bikes, stay there, and bring their families and their communities along the whole way, while diversifying both the sport, the people riding bikes in their communities, as well as like the workers in the industry, is huge. And also hearing about the benefits that you're seeing this bring in to your shop. Everyone, please, let me drop the. Enter any questions that you all have into the Q&A box on the lower toolbar, and we can send those over to Scott and to Aaron. But to start, I wanted to ask you all, how would you like to see the bicycle industry at large continue or how would you like to see the bicycle industry at large continue supporting better youth bicycling?
Aaron, you want to start first again?
Sure. Yeah, I will. And so, I mean, really, with that as a large, I mean, it's just that really the opportunity to engage as many youth programs as we can, because that's where it really all starts. I mean, I think we all know, is like all of us that are so into bicycles nowadays, it's typically started when we were kids. And so that's really, I'd say, is probably some of our bigger challenges, is continuing to get the support from the industry to continue to support that. So we've, like, for instance, at Project Bike Tech, we've had quite a bit of industry support, and so we've partnered with different bike companies and Park Tools and different industry brands that have really been supportive, and so that's really where we need to continue forward, is to keep partnering with these large brands, and to help drive more youth cycling.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities right now, and I feel like we often miss, some of the low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of ways I think the industry could really help. We work with a lot of kids every year. We work with preschool and elementary age kids, right? So 2 to 11-year-old kids. And that's really the sweet spot for getting new kids on bikes as young as possible, right? So taking that 2-year-old who can stand over a balance bike and giving them a meaningful pathway into cycling that lasts a lifetime. And there's a couple of things that really hang us up. For context, we work with about 3,000 kids a year. So it's, we work with a lot of kids. When you were showing that slide at the beginning of the presentation, Nick, and it was what do parents think would help get more kids on bikes, and infrastructure, safe places to ride really is obviously the biggest response there. But if you add the other 3 up, they're all really education oriented, right? It's like online classes at school, or classes from a bike shop. So combined, you add all those numbers up, that's 96%. So while I understand that there's obviously such a need for infrastructure, and I love all the work that's going on in infrastructure, I would love to see more resources applied and shifted to education and programming, because that's what we see as the biggest hangup. Mm-hmm. Now, yeah, I live in Bentonville, Arkansas. We have amazing infrastructure, but most of the programming we do is in like parking lots and regular neighborhood parks that are everywhere in the country. And when we show parents that you can ride in these places, they do start riding. So we don't have to have perfect manicured greenways and bike lanes to get more kids on bikes. We just have to activate these community spaces in a more meaningful way. But the other thing that really hangs us up a lot is on the equipment side of things. And I think it's a really big issue. It's not a small issue, it's a huge issue. And if you teach kids how to ride a bike and you're really in the field doing it, you will see really quickly that the equipment gets in the way. So when it comes first to training wheels, I would really love to see the industry collectively embrace a balance first mindset for teaching kids how to ride a bike, and stop sending conflicting messages about training wheels. So if you walk into a shop and you see training wheels on a bike, that's typically because the brand is shipping the bike with training wheels, right? So specialty brands are selling to IBDs. We could start there, and we could say, hey, maybe those bikes don't get shipped with training wheels anymore. Could training wheels become an accessory that's added on if needed, so that we don't inadvertently just put training wheels in the hands of every single mechanic in the country who's just putting on the parts that come with the bike? And then when that bike goes to the sales floor, they're immediately displayed, because it's easier to stand up a small kid's bike with training wheels. But those bikes are right next to the Striders and the balance bikes out there. So we've got this conflicting message in the industry where we're saying, yeah, balance bikes are great. Balance is the way to learn, but at some point you're going to need training wheels. But it really sets kids back when they learn to ride on training wheels, and then we have to unravel that incorrect balance that happens. The other thing is just understanding what those milestones are. How does a child move from balance bike into pedaling? Another piece of equipment that's really hindering is that coaster brake issue. And I recognize People for Bikes is still navigating, where your position is on coaster brakes. But the independent bike shop brands, the specialty brands, they're not going to make freewheel handbrake bikes given the current CPSC regulations. So if we could remove those regulations, we could have those top tier brands making modern bikes for kids, just like the smaller specialty brands are doing it. It works. It works so much better to have a freewheel and a handbrake bike. That's a high quality bike. I'm not saying every bike coming out of mass market needs freewheel and handbrakes, but we got to get rid of that regulation so that we can have more advancement in the technology. So it makes it easier for kids to ride. And then on the mass market side of things, Nick, you and I have talked about this a bit. The geometry of kids' bikes really hangs us up a ton. So the industry support we'd love to see there is really elevating the conversation with those mass market brands and saying, yeah, we understand you want to make a really low quality being low price bike. We get that. That's okay. But could we evolve the geometry? Because right now, all those bikes are built around high bottom brackets and really tall seat tubes. If you take off the training wheels and take off the pedals to teach a balance first process of learning, you can't do it. They can't put their feet on the ground. So it might seem like a small issue, but it's actually a massive issue when you think about how many bikes are coming out of the mass channel and how many kids' first experience is on those bikes. And if we want them to have a fun experience in this sport, wobbling down the sidewalk on training wheels is really not that fun. And if you try to teach a kid to ride with one of those bikes under the best way to teach a child to ride, you can't do it because the geometry is a little wonky. So those mass market brands, they could be lowering those seat tubes. They could be stretching out the top tubes a little bit. They could be lowering the bottom brackets, still make the same price point bike. Just, we got to modernize that geometry. So yeah, so those are just a couple of high points, Nick. I mean, there's more for sure, but
Scott and Aaron, you both are clearly the experts. And like to anybody watching that wants to reach out after the phone call, or after the video call, we'll put their Scott and Aaron's email address on the phone, on the slide. And we will also, if you would like to reach out to me or anybody else at Fuel for Bikes to help convene this as a discussion topic at PFB, please let me know. Scott and Aaron, we're getting some great questions in the Q&A. One of them that might be a little faster than the others, and everyone will make sure that we get these to you even in the follow-up email to our time today. But how much liability is there for a shop involving minors in bike repair, bike training, or bike rides?
Aaron, you want to take training and I'll take bike rides?
Sure, yeah. Really training, it's just following, the local laws as far as like, regardless of in our situation, we work mostly with a high school program. And so the youth coming through the program have the ability to come through the high school with a work permit, and set up correctly. And of course, we have workers' comp and insurance and stuff through our business to cover all of that, to cover any of that liability. Probably the bigger liability is you have an inexperienced or less experienced person in your retail environment, that you're trying to work with and train. But it's fun and encouraging to do. I do have to find the right team members that work well with younger people. And then, there's but yeah, that liability issue really is just covered with really following your local parameters and laws. And then Scott would probably speak a little bit better to if there was, because he's running more other youth focused programs, which would, I'm sure, take some sort of potential additional insurance or something like that.
Yeah, it's a big issue, and it's actually something that we could use industry help with too. I don't know exactly how that help would come or what that looks like, but just yesterday I was going through my insurance renewal for next year, and it's going up again. Last year it went up 60%, and we've got a great agent, and they're working really hard on unlocking what we're doing. But the fact remains, we're a small pool, right? We're a small risk pool. And the insurance industry does not understand the difference between youth cycling and adult cycling. So if we start doing, which we do, mountain bike programming, as soon as we start doing mountain bike programming for kids, we're getting lumped into mountain bike risk for adults as well. The risk in the insurance industry, the underwriters see cycling, general cycling, which is like road cycling, as a lower risk. So for me as a program provider of youth, if I were just taking kids out to ride on streets, my insurance would likely be lower than if I take them on, separated soft surface trails through the woods. it's a huge cost, and it's way higher than any other youth sport, and it is going to hold back others from trying to do this type of work. If you're a club and you're looking for insurance and you're only doing, 80 participants a year, 100 participants a year, you might pay $900 in insurance, but that same club, and if it was a soccer program or any other sport, would probably pay 300. So you scale that up and you start to get bigger, and you can understand that, we're paying 3 times the insurance coverage just to run these programs. It sort of leads a little bit to, I see Rick's question down below about how do you cover your costs in these programs, what generates the income for your ROI. And, we charge parents for our programs. So we believe really strongly in sort of the for-profit model, so that we can compete against the other youth sports. It's not that we want to, be anti-team sports, but we believe bicycling is just as important as other team sports. So why wouldn't we position it right next to all the other team sports? So if you take a soccer camp, you're going to pay for that. If you join a program, you're going to pay for that. So we charge our parents just like they're taking any other sport. And that's what allows us to pay quality coaches, keep our ratios low, because that's the other challenge with putting kids on bikes. Our student to coach ratio is much lower than other sports. So that drives up our cost, because we want to hire good quality team members to be our coaches. So we pay a good wage. We run low ratios, and therefore parents have to pay a little bit more for our program, and then they might pay for something else. The side effect of that is that, our primary customer is a higher income level customer. So that's where we're starting right now. We're saying those who can afford the programming, are going to come and buy programming from us. And then we want to evolve and figure out ways to underwrite. We do already have scholarship programs and underwriting programs, but we run it like a business. And I really encourage anybody who's thinking about running youth bike classes, like, run it as a business, so that you get good employees who stick around, not just build it off of a volunteer base that comes and goes.
Scott and Aaron, this is also a great question that we should be asking all nationally cycling programs that People for Bikes works with through the YCC, and share these answers out with our audience. There's a few more questions. Somebody is running family-friendly group bike rides in the Bay Area, 3 to 6 mile group ride to support comfortable riding experiences in groups. Might anyone have tips on promoting rides through local bike shops? They often seem pretty busy and not bought into this type of programming.
I don't mind taking that one first. It's another huge challenge in the bike industry. I mean, it's a little bit of a tell it like it is moment. Like, yeah, you're right. Most shops are too busy or not leaning in on this stuff. And when we started Buddy Pegs, we started with a year on the road, going around community to community, trying to run programs in the back of bike shops. And it was really hard to convince them to come in, for us to come in and actually do like a learn to pedal class in their back parking lot, even though it was no cost to them. And clearly it would be bringing in new customers. But typical bike shops aren't really set up to think along those lines, right? They're not thinking about programming or group rides. And even as a retailer myself for quite some time now, when I had just a straightforward bike shop that was doing all the categories, it was really hard to keep group rides organized and managed. The bike shop owner and manager is typically working with really low margins compared to other retail industries, and you're just doing what you can to keep that bike shop moving forward. And sometimes a group ride just feels like an extra thing, even though it should probably be a pretty high priority. But it takes a lot of coordination with volunteers and team members and whatnot to just run a simple group ride. So, tips, do it yourself and just show up at the bike shop with a poster and be like, hey, we're going to meet here on Tuesday nights. If you really want to do it, they'll love to have you, but it is hard for the bike shops to lean in on that. What do you think about that, Aaron?
Yeah, I agree with obviously most of the statements there. The big thing I would say is one of the tips would be maybe trying to connect with, if you have a local cycling club. The local cycling clubs do a great way of promoting and basically being able to share all their information with all the bike shops without really any conflict of interest. Some bike shops might not want to share something because it's something they didn't put on. But yeah, it is really a challenge in our industry. More and more bike shops need to figure out a way to work more, on their business instead of in their business to grow it. And things like these organized rides and events like this make a huge difference. But I would say really, if you're having challenge with the bike shops, it would be potentially trying to work with any local clubs and see if they can endorse it somehow or be a co-supporter of your organized ride.
Aaron and Scott, thank you both so much. One last question. Do you see much demand for performance youth products, or is it more utilitarian focused? And that might be a hard question to answer without looking at sales data. That's fine.
I'll go ahead and grab that one, Scott, first. But so that's going to be really depending on where your demographic is. So, like for instance, we're in Santa Cruz, and we're in a really amazing bike community that has a lot of mountain biking. And so we are selling high quality youth bikes, full suspension youth bikes, and hardtail youth bikes with disc brakes, not just your basic sidewalk kids bike, which we do sell as well. But we're really see that, but it depends on what community you're in. And so I could imagine, in some communities where there is no real mountain biking around, the higher quality bikes are typically going to be more supported in the mountain bike product range than some of the other styles of bikes. And so that's what I would probably say is going to be really depending on where you're at, as far as what your demographic is and what your community calls for.
Yeah, I would echo that too. We sell similar product mix here. We do a fair amount of 20-inch full suspension bikes and on up, with disc brakes and quality suspension. But performance sometimes looks a little bit different depending on what the root of that question. We sell a lot of higher end sidewalk bikes from WOOM and Provello that would be in the performance category. They're not necessarily mountain bike or off-road oriented per se, but higher cost, lighter weight, higher quality equipment and accessories and components on those bikes. And there's a huge demand for that. Parents, once they understand, they really lean in on that product. And we oftentimes have parents arriving to our programs in a really expensive car, and they pull out a bike from a mass market retailer. So it's not that they don't have the funds, I'm passing a little bit of judgment, but it appears like they have the funds for a nicer bike. They just don't know about it. And then once they get exposed to the nicer bike, the more performance oriented bike, even if it's just a neighborhood bike, they do want it. They lean in on it, and they see that it creates a better experience for their child, and their child wants to ride more.
Scott and Aaron, one last quick question. We got this from Anne. Have you had any success engaging with NICA?
We work really closely with NICA here, and it's a great resource. And really what we're trying to do is be a feeder to NICA and provide programming that then turns into NICA, turns children into NICA student athletes if they want to go in that direction down the road. But the best way that we engage with NICA is for coaches. We have a lot of NICA student athletes as our coaches. They come in first as coaches in training, and then they become assistant coaches, and then they roll up to lead coaches. And we've had NICA student athletes, for 4 years through their their high school career, moving up into the highest ranks of our coaches and becoming our best lead coaches. And a lot of the teams will come and help us at events and other things that we put on, and then they get volunteer hours. And last year, the Bentonville NICA team won the Arkansas League because they had so many volunteer hours, and the bulk of their volunteer hours came from Buddy Pegs.
Yeah, and I also have had we've had great success working with NICA. We've been supporting a NICA team here in the Santa Cruz area for probably 8+ years. And at one point our team, there was I think there was 90 teams in the Bay Area, and they were had won like the championship or for the whole series. And it's pretty amazing to see some of these kids that start in the NICA organization or with these youth organizations where they start where they're barely learning how to ride a bike and then they're on the podium by the end of the season. And so it's been extremely positive for us. We make connection with our bike vendors and get additional discounts to support these youth programs like NICA. So the NICA coaches and NICA riders, the youth riders come in and receive extended discounts in the store that we also then usually get supported by our vendors with as well. So we're not necessarily giving away a ton of margin, but we really are, again, additionally supporting that. So we're selling, you know, pretty high-end bikes. These kids come in, they're not really don't have a great bike, and then all of a sudden they start riding with the group and then end up buying a carbon fiber or a cross country bike, some sort of nicer bike to really be more competitive with their peers. And then we work with the NICA group that we work with. It's called the composite team. So together of basically any schools that don't have their own team can join this team. And so it's pretty all encompassing for, you know, our area for youth to be involved. And then us being a sponsor, they show up about twice a week for training rides where they all meet here and leave from the store. And then they have a couple events that they do throughout the year here. We'll host for them, and then we even host and house some of their equipment off season for them here at our facility. And so we try to be as supportive as possible because it's just a amazing thing to support. And I do see, as Scott had mentioned, the you know, I've been at our bike shop for 25 years. I see these youth start really, really young to where they come and end up working here in my bike shop eventually, or they're working at, we're in a town where we have a lot of industry in our town. And so they're working at one of the bike companies in the area, you know, after gaining some experience from being a mountain bike racer at the high school level. And so, yeah, it's an amazing program to be supportive of. And yeah.
Oh, and I mean, you two are two great examples. And just as you mentioned, NICA, so many incredible youth organizations working together around the country to share the joys and benefits of bicycling with kids and their communities. Scott and Aaron, just wanted to say thank you so much for your time today, sharing these examples with the industry. As we're talking about, this is a conversation that needs to keep happening and I'm so glad that you're a part of it. Thank you for your contributions to getting more kids on bikes, and helping the industry think about and push for better bicycling for all. Everyone attending the webinar, thank you for your time today. My contact email, as well as Scott's email and Aaron's email, are on this slide. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day, enjoying the benefits and the joy of hopping on a bike sometime today or later this week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks.
So let's see.